All right, I think we've just got about everybody we're going to have, so we'll go ahead get started. So for everyone who's joined us today, thank you so much for joining us for the Education Transformation 2020 presentation. Today we're going to be presenting on strategies to transform face-to-face courses and tutoring services to an online or hybrid format. My name is Jackie Moncure, and I'm on the sales team here at Hawks Learning. Our speakers today are Professor Kelly Coultas and Tyler Price. Just to do some quick introductions. Professor Kelly Coultas is an academic coordinator for Reach Math Resources at the University of Louisville. She serves as an instructor and course administrator for the Gen 103-104 program and coordinates the Summer Calculus Preview program. Professor Coultas has worked for Reach Math Resources since 2013, and she taught high school mathematics for 5 years prior to joining Reach. She has a BS in mathematics teaching from Purdue University, Fort Wayne, and an M.Ed. Or Master's in Education in Counseling and Personnel Services with a concentration in school counseling from the University of Louisville. And she married her wonderful husband, Tyler, in March of 2019. Professor Tyler Price is the program coordinator for Reach Math Resources at the University of Louisville. In this role, Professor Price serves as an instructor and course administrator for the Gen 103-104 program, as well as a math tutor manager. He has a Bachelor of Science in Economics and a minor in mathematics, and he's currently pursuing graduate work in mathematics. He's married to his college sweetheart, Brandy, and has 2 ridiculously large horse dogs. So we're super excited that Professor Coultas and Professor Price are here to share their experience and insight with us today. We do have a large audience, so I just want to go ahead and say that because we're going to do our best to get to as many questions as possible. Shriver Hasbrook of Hawks is our course implementation specialist, and he's going to be joining us in the background of the webinar today just to help questions throughout the webinar that are related to Hawks, and then any questions for Kelly and Tyler we're going to save to the end of the presentation to cover. So on that note, Kelly, Tyler, I'm handing it over to you. So let's hit it.
Thanks. Well, hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. Just kind of a quick overview of our presentation. We are going to just give you a little context about University of Louisville and Reach. And then we're going to kind of talk about all of our related services. The Math Resource Center is our primary tutoring place for math. Our Emporium Math Lab is where we teach our intervention courses in math. We have a Learning Resource Center where we do other subjects as well as some statistics and peer-assisted learning, which is very similar to supplemental instruction if you're used to that, and workshops. So we're going to kind of give you a broad overview of what we do typically, and then try to talk about how we have decided to transition since March to now, and then moving forward into fall. So the University of Louisville is about 22,000 students. We're about 70% white and about 30% minority, with 11% being African American. The population of Louisville is around 600,000, but if you consider like greater Louisville area, it's well over 1 million people. And our main campus is our Belknap campus with the pretty picture there. Tyler and I both work for Reach. The acronym is from Resources for Academic Achievement, but we're basically the student academic service unit on the campus. We offer tutoring services, workshops, and intervention courses, and all of our services are free to students. We don't have all of our data for the 1920 school year, so we'll use the most recent data we have, but the 2018-2019 school year, we served more than 5,000 unique students. We had 76,000 contact hours. We tutored more than 70% of the 2018 cohort in at least one course. We offered more than 14,000 hours of math tutoring through the Math Resource Center, and we helped students achieve an 88% ABC pass rate and a 94% overall pass rate. So we do have a lot of staff. We have a lot of student staff. So we have 14 full-time professional staff members. Tyler and I are 2 of those 14. We have 13 graduate assistants and about 150 tutors. Our tutors earn between $10 and $11.50 per hour, depending on their experience and certification level. And we certify our tutors through the CRLA. Our training, we have face-to-face training, which will be a little more limited in the fall, online training and makeup training. And we talk about all our policies and procedures, tutoring topics, and then content training with our math tutors to make sure that they're sharp on their math. So for this fall, just the general safety measures, which I'm sure everybody's doing very similar things. Obviously, we have to comply with the state and federal guidelines. We are requiring masks and physical distancing as much as possible, but the masks are really important because it's not always possible to keep everybody exactly 6 feet or more away. All of our courses and services are being transformed into online or hybrid formats. We don't have any purely face-to-face anymore for the fall. We do have plexiglass partitions in some of our centers that are a little tighter and a little harder to social distance. We've been given new maximum capacities that are significantly lower than what we normally can have. And we have a one-way traffic flow pattern. So people have to enter in one door and exit in another. We're fortunate that a lot of our centers have 2 doors. But for centers that only have one, we're trying to, mitigate that as well and have policies in place so that it doesn't jam up by the door. And there's going to be lots of hand sanitizer and cleaning products available. So Tyler?
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how we transformed our Math Resource Center. And so before, jumping right into the transformation, I know some of you are interested because you run similar centers. This is kind of a little bit of information on ours. We offer tutoring in our math center from all the way from pre-algebra up to calculus 2. We have seating for around 50 students, even though it gets pretty tight in there with 50, 30 is probably our practical capacity, but there are 50 seats in the room. For fall 2020, we're gonna limit that to 15 students or less, not including our tutors. So it is like the significantly reduced capacity, like Kelly was saying. We're also offering an online math tutoring center running with our physical one. So I think like many of you, many of you might have experienced the same thing in March when Corona first kind of came and was really entering the national consciousness. We were out of date. We were using mostly physical services at the time with limited online offerings. So we had to take a lot of steps to move our Math Resource Center to kind of an online model. So the first thing we did, we created a drop-in center using Microsoft Teams. We picked Teams because students already had access to that with their university email account. So it was pretty seamless for them to actually join and use our services. We have roughly 10 to 12 courses that we offer support for, just a bunch of engineering and math related courses. And we decided we would create a separate channel for each supported course where students in that course could go into that channel and post if they have a question. Our tutors monitored those channels throughout the day using the notifications on Teams, and their response times were very quick. We were impressed that we had under a minute was the average wait time for students before they got a response from the time they asked a question. And when we do the tutoring online, there is an interactive whiteboard feature on Teams. So if you have small groups, this is good because I believe it's only active if you have 3 or more people in the group. If not, our tutors will use OneNote often and just write the problem out through there on their tablet. And then we listed some useful Teams features here because I know a lot of you might have specific needs and you might know these already, but we found the live captioning to be very useful, especially with students who may have hearing issues. The live captioning was very effective. I had a student who was deaf and she very much appreciated it. There's a recording feature which we'll use to record small group math sessions or reviews, and may even use it to record our syllabus talks. There's that whiteboard that I mentioned earlier. And then we have private channels on there for some of our summer math programs where we don't necessarily want anyone joining. Now for fall 2020, both sites will be open concurrently throughout the day. The online hours will be slightly longer than our in-person hours, and we have reduced staff in both centers kind of throughout the day, running with a smaller staff instead of a large staff with a physical presence. And then here's just kind of a summary chart we made for your reference later, just kind of comparing the differences between our face-to-face format, the online plan, which we had to implement in spring and are ready to go towards if we have to in fall, say we get sent home, and then our hybrid plan, that's our tentative plan now for fall 2020. As you can see, the hours of operation are extended on the online. It's a lot easier for people to work from home. So we found our tutors are willing to work a little bit later into the night or possibly on the weekend. And our staffing, like I said, we listed our levels of staffing there for each. With the online and hybrid model, we plan to have smaller staff throughout the day than we did in person because we saw decreased volume in spring. And then finally, through our Math Resource Center, we offer a number of programs. All of those were fully online for 2020. The Calculus Preview program was online in the past anyway, so that wasn't a big adjustment. But we did have to take our other two programs, which had been in person in the past, and make those completely online this year. And again, kind of similar format through Microsoft Teams on both those.
Okay. So now I'm going to talk about our Emporium Math Lab. You can see pictures there of last school year. We have 36 workstations in there, and we'll kind of tell you how we plan to space and how we plan to implement our classes. This math lab is used exclusively for our intervention courses, which we call Gen 103 and 104. They are 3-credit courses. However, they're elective credits. They don't get actual math credits for them, but they do prepare them for their math credits, and we're graded pass-fail. So for the fall, what we've decided to do, which as Tyler said in the past, we were very, very heavily reliant on face-to-face, and we actually only did face-to-face completely for all of our classes. And so now we have no fully face-to-face classes. We are going to have two fully online classes with 50 students enrolled in each, and they have online tutoring available, as well as instructor drop-in hours through Teams, and our instructors have different channels similar to how Tyler showed you with the MRC. We have 22 hybrid classes that we're offering. So those are capped at 30 students. So typically there's 25 to 30 students enrolled in a class. With our new limitations for distancing, we're only allowed to have a maximum of 20 students at a time in the lab. So what we're going to do is have half of our roster report on Monday and the other half report on Wednesday if they're a Monday-Wednesday class, and then the same thing, report on Tuesday or Thursday if you're in a Tuesday-Thursday class. So how we're going to do that and split up our classes is the first week of classes, we're not actually going to meet. They're going to have some online things like watching syllabus videos, and I'll give you a little more details about that later. And taking their syllabus quiz and Hawks and getting some things set up during the first week. And there's an optional pre-assessment the first week. And then once our first week of add drop time is over and our rosters settle, we're just going to split them alphabetically with, 15 students reporting on Monday and 15 reporting on Wednesday. So they'll know to look for their email for which day they're assigned. We're going to mark our student workstations with a color coding system because, as you could see in the picture before, the seats are pretty tight together. So it's kind of going to be like a checkerboard pattern. And what we'll do is, let's say the 9 a.m. class comes in and they'll all have to sit at a workstation marked with a red card, for example. And then the 10 a.m. class, when they come in, they'll have to sit in a workstation marked with a blue card so that we can wipe down and sanitize the red stations so that they can be ready for the next class coming in. Because we just didn't think we could turn it around in the 10 minutes in between classes, and also answering questions and doing instructor type things and talking to our students. We didn't think we'd have enough time to clean in between. So we'll clean them right at the beginning of the next class. It's going to be pretty low tech. It's just going to be some laminated color paper with some Velcro dots stuck to the back of the monitor so it sticks up a little bit. And we're just going to go with that and see how that works. Students are responsible for kind of being an online student on their, so to speak, off day. So they should still be working on Wednesday if they wouldn't normally report to class that day. We've revised to where almost everything can be done online. So that students can work whenever they want to, because they only get to see us for 50 minutes a week. We do offer face-to-face tutoring on Fridays, but we are doing that by appointment only. And we're using the system that our advisors use. It's like EAB, Navigate, but we're setting up appointments through that just to keep the flow controlled. So just to talk a little bit about our classes, we have Gen 103 and 104. They're very similar. One is Gen 103, it's more for non-STEM majors. It's more basic algebra based and leads to, if they maybe only need one math class for their degree. Gen 104 leads to pretty much anything. They go from our class to college algebra if they've taken Gen 104. It's more of an intermediate algebra class. We do use the Emporium model, and we left this information in just in case you haven't used that in the past. Using the Emporium model in conjunction with Hawks has been amazing. It's really, really helped our transition because we didn't have to worry about organizing our content and delivering that because that was already done. So here are kind of the hallmarks of an Emporium model. We based our setup around this research from the National Center for Academic Transformation. But it needs to be computer-based, fully integrated courseware, which, check with Hawks. The curriculum needs to be personalized. We do use pre-assessment tests. Self-accelerated, students can finish early. We don't actually lecture, but there are videos embedded where questions are being explained by math teachers, or they can ask us in class and we can give them a mini lecture on the spot. It's kind of like on-demand help in real life, or they can go to our online tutoring center and get on-demand help that way as well. So Emporium model also needs to have ongoing feedback. With Hawks, there's tons and tons of formative assessment. They're doing lots and lots of certifies all the way through. And we do cumulative tests so that they're constantly reviewing. Active learning, students do more math in our class than they've done in many other classes because they're the ones doing the math. They're not just watching us do the math. It's a mastery learning model. They have to get an 80% in order to pass a certify. And if they don't, that's fine. They just review, ask questions, and then retake it. We do have an attendance policy. And we do have these plan of action meetings because we obviously are always monitoring student progress, and if they fall behind, we meet with them to make a plan. So other features, we do use professional staff and grad assistant students, GSAs, to teach. We have peer tutors embedded in all classes. Normally we have 2 tutors and 1 teacher for 30 students, but since we have 15 at a time, we're just staffing with 1 teacher and 1 tutor per class. And we'll see how that goes and, adjust accordingly if we feel that we need more or, whatever. Students can finish the class early, and they can actually take Gen 103 and 104 in the same semester. About 25 students a semester do that. And we have maybe 1,000 students over the whole year. So it's a small group, but it's a really good option for people that are trying to get to their credit-bearing math class. And returning students don't start over. So if a student took our class and maybe didn't get all the way to the end or didn't pass, we let them start at the midterm on their second attempt. And just already having the Emporium model in place and using online courseware really did help us. That was one bright spot in the, extremely intense, rapid transition in March, and then redoing things for summer, and then again, getting ready for fall. We haven't had to make many changes with what we had set up in Hawks. Here are some of our pass rates. So it has been working. Our goal is always 70%. So for the last several years, we've been meeting or exceeding that. The spikes are the summer. Usually students, I feel like, I don't know if you just get a different, more focused type of student in the summer, or they have to do it every day. There are some different benefits there, but the spikes are the summer. Generally though, we're around the 70% mark. So like Tyler, I have a couple of charts for you. Here are kind of the main things and policies and procedures we had to think about in the transition. Obviously, we can't sit up there to the whole class and do our normal syllabus presentation, but we're going to record some short videos, and we're actually going to use it as a training tool for our graduate assistants. They're going to help us record those, so they're going to have to know the syllabus inside and out as well. But no matter what, we always have a syllabus quiz in Hawks, and it's like a course contract as well, kind of a digital agreement that they understand how they're graded and the attendance policy and such. Pre-assessments, we really like the pre-assessment option. Normally, we always proctor it in class on day 2, but since we have to split our class, we didn't really have the ability to do that this time. So what we're doing is not having any actual classes the first week, and we just have pre-assessments by appointment. Students are welcome to take it, but they're also welcome to not take it. Some students just want to do all the lessons anyway. We used to have a pre-assessment after the midterm to try to test out of things after the midterm to the final. Typically, students didn't test out of much, and logistically, it just didn't seem very realistic to use that in our hybrid format. And right now, we're not doing anything with the fully online class. If you did want to do a pre-assessment, I just think it would be really important to proctor it, so you'd have to be using some sort of proctoring service in order to do that. We've chosen not to right now just because students have kind of been thrust into this online environment, and we didn't want to have any additional costs. With our attendance policy, our students can fail due to attendance, but right now we're obviously going to be much, much more flexible. They're actually only required to meet 12 times in the fall. And so we're letting them miss up to 3 classes with no documentation, no requirement to make up. If they have documentation, it's automatically excused. They don't need to make it up. If they don't have documentation and they've missed 4 times, we'll ask them to make up an absence. But the main thing is, if you don't feel well, stay home. We don't want anybody forcing anything right now. And there's no limit on makeup, so they can make up as much as they need to. In our online setting, rather than attendance, there's a number of contact units that they need to get in, and that either means, attending a tutoring session or meeting with your instructor using the send to instructor feature in Hawks. And so that's another thing we're revising with our online instructor. What we did in the summer would probably be too much for the 100 students he's going to have. So we're going to revise the number of contact units, but we're still going to use them. We have a guided notebook. We used to use it and check it, and we'd have to physically swap it with the student and hold it and check it. And we've decided we want to limit our touch points with other people's items, obviously. So it's still going to be required, and we'll still reference it and use it, but we're never going to collect it and to grade it. And we had required worksheets embedded in the notebook, and we've replaced those with online review assignments in Hawks. So just so that we don't have to touch their personal items right now. And for the fully online, it's highly recommended, but they don't actually have to purchase it right now. The plan of action, this is really important. If anybody falls behind, we have them meet with a course administrator who's basically in a mentoring role, Just to make sure, like, see if they're okay, see if there's something going on in their life, see if they need to be connected to some of our campus resources, if there's some, other issues or safety concerns. I mean, you all know, you teach, lots of things pop up, and just being behind in math is often just the symptom of a much deeper situation. So check for safety and all those things, but also to give them math resources and make sure that they can get back on track with math. Typically those had been done in person. Now we're going to do them online. For the hybrid students, we're going to do them online during their, so to speak, off day, because we don't want to pull them out of class while they're here, because they only have 50 minutes with us. And then the online class will do these meetings by appointment. Final exams, we used to do them in person only. Now we're still going to do them in person until Thanksgiving break. And then the University of Louisville is going fully remote after Thanksgiving break. So finals and all that, if they haven't finished our class early, they'll be able to take their final exam remotely with, we have an in-respondus monitor with Blackboard. They can still finish early. So that's great that we still have that option available. In the fully online, they have two options or two chances to take it, and they're both monitored with Respondus monitor. Okay, Tyler.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our Learning Resource Center and kind of the transition they made to online. Our Learning Resource Center, it's the part of REACH that offers tutoring for most classes outside of mathematics. As you know, mathematics is a huge area of need for tutoring. So this is kind of the center that captures all the other topics, biology, chemistry, some of the popular ones in there that aren't mathematics. There is a little bit of math courses supported, or there are a little bit of math courses supported by the Learning Resource Center, specifically statistics. We let the Learning Resource Center cover that because the statistics course that many people seek tutoring for is a 100 level course that is not required for math majors. So often they won't have necessarily the answers or know the methods that they teach in this course. But other than that, all math courses are handled through the Math Resource Center. Now, in the fall 2020, the Learning Resource Center will be fully online. They are actually not having any face-to-face meetings unless there's a special need for it. They were more, in the past, they had made better use of online resources. So this was a little bit easier of a transformation for our colleagues in the online or the Learning Resource Center. But they plan to use, again, a combination of teams, and they do small group tutoring. So I imagine that they'll be scheduling meetings with their between their tutors and tutees using Microsoft Teams and just having the small group meet through a Teams link. And those will be limited to 1 hour per week. That was the policy, even in face-to-face. So they'll be meeting once per week with students online.
Okay, so peer-assisted learning also supports some of our math courses. In the past, we were using this supplemental instruction model, and we've transitioned to a very similar related peer-assisted learning model. But basically, this is for classes that have historically been difficult for students to pass, the big, large enrollment. We have that it's greater than 100 students, in a class. So a lot of our big chemistry classes and biology classes and things like that. We do offer those for a lot of our engineering mathematics courses. And in the past, those have pretty much been all face-to-face. We will have some face-to-face if the session's going to be smaller. Like let's say they only have 20 students, they can spread out in a large room and be safe. But some of them get hundreds of students to attend, so those will have to be fully online. But they're going to live stream and record everything, so even if it is face-to-face and somebody's not comfortable coming in, they can still attend and get the content. So a PAL leader attends the class session, prepares for the weekly large group discussions, They have 2 to 3 sessions a week, and the big thing is that they hold test review sessions, and those tend to be extremely well attended. They work about 10 hours a week. So at U of L, about 40% of the students in classes with a PAL leader have gone to at least one PAL session. The math courses, particularly the engineering math courses, typically have a much, much higher attendance rate. And students who do attend PAL sessions earn at least a half of a letter grade better than students who do not attend.
And then finally, kind of wrapping up, I know a lot of you work in learning centers where you probably do put on workshops. So we'll talk about very quickly what we did to make those online. It's pretty self-explanatory. We haven't actually delivered one of our workshops for 2020 online yet, but again, we'll plan to do those completely online. We do a practice workshop with partnering with our College of Education and Human Development. We'll do a couple of those per semester, and we plan likely to, again, schedule a Teams meeting and send out a link to potential students so they can join that and just do the whole thing online instead of face-to-face. Also, we offer workshops for some of the graduate school entrance exams, GRE, LSAT, MCAT. Again, we've partnered with Princeton Review there, and I think we'll be doing those fully online in the fall 2020 using links. It just basically replacing everything we did in our face-to-face online. And then lastly, this was actually very easy to put online. One of the staff members for REACH developed a series of like academic workshops. They're essentially some of the soft skills that students need to succeed in college. Some of the strategies to studying, taking effective notes. These were already online modules. So we will continue using those in an online capacity in fall 2020.
Okay, so the main thing kind of now we just kind of want to wrap up before we get to the questions is, why did we show all of that information? Just because it is really important that even if we can't deliver things, the way we would prefer to, and even if it doesn't feel like it's as good sometimes, our students really need all these support services. So we're really trying to find a way to still provide all of those services. With our students who've visited REACH for 6 or more hours, their GPA is consistently over 3.0. Less than 6 hours still is close to 3.0. Students who don't visit us at all, on average, have a 2.5. And here's just a few graphs. Students who visit us 6 or more hours have higher retention rates. Graduation rates are higher. So it's really important that for us to try to figure out a way, that's just what we're doing. We're really interested to hear what everybody else is doing too, to keep these services available in some format. And then Tyler?
And then finally, while we're talking about Corona, we wanted to address another big topic that's on everyone's mind. We actually looked into some of our data last year for our course, the Gen 103, 104, and kind of dug deeper into the data based on ethnicity to see if there were any racial disparities in the outcomes with our students. And we were, pleasantly surprised to find that there was no significant bias. Pass rates, as you can see, were very similar amongst Black, white, Hispanic students, kind of reducing that racial divide, especially that's prominent in mathematics. We were very proud to see that as we looked through our data, there really wasn't that much of a disparity that was significant at all. And then our ex-assistant director for REACH performed a little statistical analysis on some of our data and found that there was no statistically significant relationship between ethnicity and pass rate. So you can kind of see our data there.
So we just thought that was important to bring up. because we really want to continue to be able to serve our students, especially, you know, historically underserved students, give them opportunities as much as possible, because we do have data to show that what we have been doing has been working. I have some discussion questions here, but we're interested in hearing, you know, what questions you have and hearing what you're doing, because we're not above stealing ideas at the last minute right now. So anything anybody would like to share would be great.
So Schreiber, I noticed we do have a fair number of questions on the
Yeah.
Q&A here. Would you like us to start with those?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can ask them to you real quick. So thank you to everyone who has put in questions so far. We had a lot come in, so we really appreciate that. So kind of starting from the top, John asked, for your CRLA tutoring, how do you implement it? Is it a combination of online and face-to-face training? And then what do you use for online training for tutors?
Kelly, would you like to take that one?
So we do have a combination of face-to-face and online, and with the center certification, there are guidelines on how much can be purely online. And I think it's actually, the language might be synchronous and asynchronous. So I think some of our sessions we'll be able to do in a synchronous format, but online, and it'll still count like what we would typically think of as a face-to-face. With the online training, a lot of them are modules in Blackboard. A lot of our tutors are added to a Blackboard organization, and then there's a kind of a grade book in Blackboard to show, you know, make sure everybody's done everything on. That's what we've been using in the past.
So, all right. And Carrie asked, did you have monitoring hours for the tutors?
So on that, our staffing approach here, yes, we do have hours where tutors are kind of designated to monitor our channels. That was kind of our, you know, in a drop-in center like the Math Resource Center, we would staff a number of tutors in per hour, kind of regardless of the actual volume in the room. They were just kind of paid to be there, whether there's 5 students in the room or whether there's 30. So we've taken the approach, we assign them to specific hours, which they monitor our math resource team and all the channels in there. And obviously the question arises, how do you make sure they're actually monitoring it? 2 ways. We did have them send us a quick message as they signed in and signed out on their shift. We used that approach early. Obviously that leaves a lot of time in between. We do check to see teams. If you look at kind of the icon for the tutor, it will mark it as available or unavailable. So we can see if they're offline, if their dot on Teams is red. But other than that, we really don't have a super effective way. We've just kind of implemented a system of trust with our tutors. And until we have response times that kind of seem, you know, over long for how low the volume is, we might have to take additional steps, but so far just having our tutors monitor has worked pretty well.
So we had a couple other questions about the tutors, so I'm just going to ask those real quick then. So Aaron asked, do you have some suggested resources for tutor training and practice tutoring for tutors in training? They said they're asking this because they have new tutors coming in and they need to practice tutoring before they work with the students directly.
And that's a great question. In the past and even now, we didn't necessarily make like actual tutoring practice a significant part of the training. A lot of it was we're delivering strategies on how to tutor, and of course the content review. We do publish review sheets for both of our centers. So the tutors in our Math Resource Center, we have our 5 most common classes, and then kind of charting a syllabus that, you know, from each of those classes, we find the topics that cover, put some questions on there and give sample explanations. But Kelly, did you want to add anything to that? I don't know if we had any good.
A lot of what we do is like, you know, teaching them about cognitive scaffolding. What is that? What does that mean? What does it look like? Strategies for moving around the classroom, like I'm sure you've heard of like praise, prompt, leave, like say something, you know, hey, it's great you asked this question, prompt them to do what they need to do, and then, you know, physically move around the room so they don't get stuck. And just more like educational strategies. And then the content is kind of a consistently touched on thing throughout, because there's kind of no way to actually cover all of it. So the tutor managers, which are Tyler and Keith McKnight, who's not on the call, are kind of constantly mentoring them. And we also have master tutor mentors who are seasoned and have been with us for several semesters and have leadership skills that kind of try to take them under their wing throughout. So it's not super formal. So I don't know that we have any, unfortunately, nothing that we could just like email you that would be real helpful. I don't know, what else do you think, Tyler? Is that pretty much
Yeah,
it?
no, I wish we had more for that question.
Yeah.
A nice little link to email.
Appreciate your answers. So Edward asked that another question about the tutoring. So for the face-to-face tutors, how are they currently being protected within the tutoring centers?
So that's a good question. In our math resource center, we do have, obviously everyone will be wearing masks. We won't allow any students to come in without properly wearing a mask. We do have social distancing in place, so everyone is spaced out within 6 feet of each other. In our math resource center, we have partitions between the student and the tutor. So they'll have another barrier there as well. Hand sanitizer stations, and then just kind of reducing any physical contact. We won't be kind of using anything in the past. We used to have homework assignments that the tutor would take their notebook and check off. We're doing away with anything where there's any interchange between the tutor and the student.
And we also have a variety of whiteboards, some that are actually like on the wall, small ones we can hold so they can stand back and try to just write large, and talk through the question with the student, or first have the student talk the question through with the tutor to see kind of how far they got, and try to just assess it verbally, because we don't want to really be standing over their shoulder or inside their space. So we'll be using whiteboards extensively to separate ourselves.
So, all right, so a couple other questions here, kind of moving away from the tutors now. So Carrie had asked a couple ones, so I'm going to combine these. So how do you measure student engagement online? And then how do you plan for the online remediation of missed skills?
So with monitoring students' time online, there's a report in Hawks that we run, time per student. So we've been monitoring that, and then reaching out to them, either emailing them. If students have totally kind of fallen off the map, our supervisor will call them. She'll look them up in our student system and place a phone call and check in and make sure they're okay, and then encourage them to use their resources. And as far as remediating, a lot of it is just encouraging them to use the resources that are in place. We offer one-on-one appointments. A lot of times students don't take us up on that, but if somebody's really, really struggling, you know, we can mentor them through a one-on-one appointment until they get caught up.
Awesome. All right, so a lot more questions here, so I'm going to try to get as many as we can. Appreciate everyone for submitting them, so please continue so, and if we have time, we'll try to answer as many as we can. So one here is, do the at-home group of students have to meet at the class time for class, or do they just work at any time?
For us, we're doing asynchronous, so they can work whenever they want. There are still deadlines, but they can, as long as they're meeting their deadlines, they can work whenever they want. The online instructor has definitely learned to set some boundaries, and he makes a great use of his out-of-office reply. In the summer, he's been working one weekend day because he prefers that. He likes to work one weekend day and then take one day off during the week. And so he's kind of been very upfront about that and kind of conditioned to students that he might not be able to reply like immediately to a lot of things, and usually says 24 to 48 hours.
Thank you. All right, so Latrice asked, have you thought about having students upload their guided workbook pages for you?
We have, but we were concerned about the logistics of it. I know now people can just take pictures or even, scan with their phone, but considering a lot of our staff is, and more of our classes are actually taught by graduate assistants than by professional staff, they do have a 20-hour-a-week limit, and we really, really try to respect that. So we have chosen not to do that, but I think it's a good idea in certain contexts, but just with our volume, I don't think that we could pull it off in an efficient way.
The answer. All right, so let's go here. So if students are taking online final exams, how are you ensuring that they are not using some other outside aids that are not in the view of the monitor?
Tyler, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, no, that is a good question, and honestly, it's a great concern because I know I taught an online class this semester, and we did use Respondus Monitor, and it was effective in catching at least one cheater. Like I said, there is definitely the concern there that students may have, I don't know, a phone in their lap that's outside of the view. I've noticed that the Respondus Monitor does a pretty decent job at catching, and of course you can see the whole presentation or the whole video. You can watch it all the way through. Obviously, we don't have time to do that for so many students. That is one of our concerns is test security there, obviously. I don't know necessarily how we could prevent kind of a student using a phone out of view of the camera. Um, that one, we're just doing the best we can with things that we can see. But yes, definitely in the online environment, it is difficult to make sure that, absolutely everything is being done honestly. Kelly, I don't know if you have anything
Yeah,
to add
if
there.
you can use, there's a lot of different proctoring services. Different campuses have partnerships with different ones and everything. I just would highly recommend at least using a proctoring service. We did Respondus Monitor because it was available through Blackboard, which we use for free to the students. So that's why we did that. But it is concerning. But we're just kind of doing the best we can with the options available.
Yeah, we do, and we do make use of some of the great Hawks reporting features. Again, that
Oh yeah.
yeah, we keep a suspicious activity log amongst our instructors. So that's just if we notice that students are doing lessons in unreasonably short times, if they're blazing through a lesson in 3 minutes that typically takes 45, and spending 10 seconds per question, we do have a course administrator reach out to those students, letting them know that their lessons have been uncredited. And then, of course, now that student's on our radar, we do look extra careful at their final exam attempt. But yeah, I don't know if there's a surefire way to catch everything there when people are taking tests in their own home. It is difficult.
So Alexandra had a question here. What is the best way to do live demonstrations of math? They said that they are going to use the chalkboard and solving problems in front of the entire class. And they asked, is this best done with an actual whiteboard and a careful camera placement? Or should they maybe use an iPad to work out the problems?
That's a great question because I've been involved, I've done it a few different ways at this point. I would say my favorite option is when I have a tablet equipped with a stylus. I think sharing a screen like a OneNote screen there is pretty easy because you have a lot of blank space. You can kind of write as you talk, very similar to how you would in a in-person environment. Now, if you don't have a tablet with a touch screen, I will say that it is definitely difficult to use OneNote on a computer or laptop writing with a clicker. I would probably make that my lowest ranked option, second being having an actual whiteboard or chalkboard placed behind you where you kind of position the camera and write legibly and kind of large. That's option number 2. But in my personal experience, I recommend sharing a screen with a stylus if at all possible.
All right, so a few more questions left. We've got a little bit of time left, so I'm going to try to get them all in if we can. All right. So Manuel asks, do you recommend the use of Zoom to meet with your online courses of 30 to 40 students?
We haven't actually used Zoom, so I can't comment specifically on Zoom. Shriver would probably be able to because he uses it. He lives on Zoom right now.
Sure.
What would you say about 30 to 40 people at a time with Zoom? What would you recommend?
As the host for a Zoom meeting, you're able to mute people if there's background noise, things like that. There are a lot of tools that you can use that are available. So you can turn on features where you can set up polls before the class. You can have, if students do have questions as they're going through, they can flag it with a raised hand symbol so that you know, hey, they have a question, so you can pause real quick as opposed to having interruptions. So, I mean, same with anything, it's the more people you have, if they're going to be actively involved, might be a little more difficult, but I've definitely seen that work with a number of instructors that I work with, and it's definitely something that I would talk to your Hawks Training Sport representative too, because we work with a number of schools and we'd be able to connect you with some who have used it and be able to give you some more examples and things you can do. So.
Yeah, and Trevor, is there like a breakout feature in Zoom, like, or you can form small groups?
Yes, there is. So you can set up. I'm trying to think of the term for it, but yeah, breakout rooms. So you can set up breakout rooms in Zoom. You can do it beforehand or sort of on the fly in the class and direct people into certain groups, and then you as the host, you're able to jump between those rooms. So it's definitely a useful feature that you could use for that.
Microsoft Teams has similar functions. We just haven't used them too extensively because we've been, so far anything online we've done asynchronously, so we haven't, had a set time.
Yeah, the largest meeting I've coordinated, we do in our summer math program, we had 30 in one, and that works pretty well with Teams.
Cool. Well, speaking of Teams, we actually had a question about that, so I'll go ahead and ask that one now then. So Scott asked, can you talk more about the Microsoft Teams for tutoring? Are tutors covering multiple course channels at a time? Are multiple tutors covering a course channel at a time? Or are you just using text chat or using video chat along with it?
On that, for that, with Microsoft Teams, it has been pretty useful. We have our tutors who work in our math resource center are expected to know all subjects through Calculus 2, and that's probably 10 or 12 courses between math and engineering there that they're expected to know. So yes, we have usually 2 tutors at a time monitoring all the channels. Before they really get started, we have them turn on their notifications for all the channels they're monitoring so they don't really miss much. When a student has a question, they've already been added to our Microsoft team beforehand, so they can simply go through, if they're using the web client, if they're on their email, they can get to Microsoft Teams there. We've added them already as a member of the team. So all they have to do is go in there, find their channel, and then post a question. We usually just have them write, I have a question, and then immediately, within a minute, a tutor will respond. Initiate a private chat is how we typically do that. And then they'll use OneNote typically to kind of work with the student. So, I mean, it's worked pretty well for us. My only concern is, if we have high volume, we may have to move towards a system where we set up a small group meeting within a channel. The only reason we don't love setting up meetings, we go with the private chats as opposed to the meetings, is that when you schedule a meeting, it notifies everybody in the channel. So people that don't necessarily need that information sometimes get notified. So we've gone with mostly private chats.
So I'm gonna try to get one, maybe 2 more questions in, and then we're running up on our time. So I'm sorry, we won't be able to get to everyone, but thanks for everyone who submitted because we have a ton of questions. Last thing here, what resources do you offer for your students who do not have computers? And on that note, is your college able to provide computers for students in these cases?
Tyler, you were just looking into the the rental from the library, right? Did you find?
Yes. So that is a great question. First of all, we're not necessarily forcing any of our tutors to work online. Now that we're in our hybrid model, I know some tutors might, for safety reasons, want to work exclusively online. Others may want to work in person. So if a tutor doesn't have equipment, they're not necessarily forced to do online tutoring. They can work in person. If they don't have an equipment and they're interested in online tutoring, I would recommend send them to our university library. They can rent computers there. It's very close to our building. They can rent computers there for, I believe, 24 hours. And so hopefully, if a tutor doesn't have that, they can walk over to the library, rent it, and then, carry out their online tutoring for their shift and return it afterwards.
And for
If
the
we haven't-
student, oh, sorry, I thought you
Oh,
were
go ahead, Kelly.
for our students in our class, that was kind of one reason we wanted to offer not everything fully online, so that we could have students on campus and using the campus resources freely. So we will have some students who don't have a personal computer, who will take our class in the hybrid format. And we also have 10 PCs in our math resource center, so they can use those and just do their Hawks learning work, on site. And then hopefully they can finish before Thanksgiving. Our semester ends super early. Finals start like the week after Thanksgiving. So hopefully they can finish early and just be done. But if not, we'll work with them to accommodate, a final exam after Thanksgiving during finals week. They're supposed to be 100% remote, but we'll see what we can do. We'll make it work. But that's kind of why we wanted to have both options, because some people really feel strongly about online, but some people really feel, need the resources that we have physically here.
And I think that's all the time we're going to have for today for questions. So I just want to say a big thank you to Professor Coultas and Professor Price. And thank you all for taking the time to attend this today. If you have any other questions, please direct them to us. We're at marketing@hawkslearning.com, and we'll be emailing you all a link to view this webinar on demand as well. So I hope everybody has a great rest of their day.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
comments, everyone, and the suggestions. We'll look through those. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.